Having worked with over 5,000 business clients, I've identified 5 attributes that are absolutely critical for a business owner to have to run a successful business. You might know some of these, but at least one of them will be a surprise. Every single business owner that's successful in business has resilience, and it's often talked about in business. No, you've got to do the hard yards, you've got to keep at it, you just got to work, and eventually things will come. Well, being on a crusade is not successful. So there's a difference, right? A crusade is about passion, and just passion at all costs, where resilience is informed by what's going on in the business day to day, and it's refined in terms of your actions. And I'm confident about what I'm trying to achieve, and I know that eventually I'll get there. And I've thought about the benchmarks or flags along the way to help me know that I'm either there or not there. And I adjust accordingly. Crusading is not resilience. And that's where business owners can get horribly wrong. They think they've just got to stick the course regardless of whatever's happening. It's not that. Now, the second attribute that's key in business is leadership. To me, if I'm described leadership, it's about going your own way. It's about figuring out what you want to do as a business. What is the point of difference that you want to place in the market and have the market value, product or service? And then mustering the resources around your offering so that it's sustainable. And often in business, leadership can be a little bit misguided because business owners consider they need to live large in their business. And often when we value businesses, we find that there's huge owner concentration risk because an owner has grabbed hold of their offering and held it tight. And because of the risk, they've managed that through the process without involving others. True leadership in business is about ensuring that your team is as important as you in business. And when I say your team, that's your internal team, but it's also your customers, your suppliers, other players around your business that go to supporting the offering. So leadership, and really effective leadership in business, diminishes the presence of the owner. It's not easy because ultimately you need a driver in a good business. And that's another element of leadership, right? Show me the vision. Show me where we're going. Help me understand what are the steps to get there. That's a leader. That's what you need to do with your business. The third attribute of a good business owner is the innate ability to look in the mirror at yourself regularly and get a true understanding of what are my strengths and what are my weaknesses. And it's being able to use that and test it to run your business. And not everyone's good at that. It seems that you have to be jack of all trades. So you have to be a good financial manager, you have to be a good operations manager, you have to know IT like the back of your hand, you have to know what's coming up in terms of technology and AI, new trends in your business. You have to know the external market affecting your business, your competitors and how that's going. You have to be a good communicator to build a good culture in your team. You have to be able to communicate with your customers. You have to be a good marketer, both on social media and traditional marketing. That's just too much. You don't actually have to have all those qualities to be good in business. What you do have to have is, I know I'm really good at business development and sales. I can win a deal. I can sell ice to Eskimos. That's the first step. Then figure out what you're really not good at and say to yourself, who can I trust that's got the skills to do those things and help me develop my business? The best business owners do that. They know exactly what they're good at, and they're happy to be vulnerable in front of their advisors, staff, even customers, and say, look, I'm not good at that, but Josie over here, she'll help you with a financial assessment on that. And often you'll see in trade-related businesses, you'll see tradies that move from the tools to project management and business development because they're good at that, but they will employ an estimator to ensure that they're pitching projects to make money. And they'll trust that person. And sometimes we've sold businesses or been involved in advising businesses where they've given that person skin in the game in their business because they're so critical. So key skill, a key attribute in a successful business is knowing what you're good at, knowing what you're not, building a team of people around you to share the load in those areas, and being vulnerable sufficiently to constantly learn and improve your skills and the team's skills. It's a journey. You're never as good today as you could be as good tomorrow. The fourth attribute of a successful business owner is actually, in my experience, creativity. If you're building a sustainable business of value, you've got to have a point of difference, and that's got to be competitive in the market. But also it's got to be ahead of the competition, and it's got to sense where the customers are going and what their needs and wants might be. Reminds me of one of my podcast guests, Mark Reed. In the Australian market, Mark was one of the first people in Australia to build an online betting agency for horse racing, Sportsbet, that we now know. And I said to him, how'd you go about that, Mark? And he said, well, actually, look, I was a voracious reader and I was a curious guy. And so I was involved in the betting and racing industry here in Australia, but I was looking at what was happening overseas. And he said, I wasn't all that creative, James. What I did was I stole ideas from overseas that I felt might work in this market. And I had the drive and the passion and the motivation to bring them here before anyone else did. Creativity can happen in different ways. It's not necessarily coming up with something that's never been sold before. Creativity is about placing something in a market that hasn't been placed before and about positioning it so it's of value to the customer and also, importantly, can increase the value of your business. The fifth attribute is a willingness and almost zest to have skin in the game. And this is where owning and running a business is different to being employed. And there's no right or wrong. But ultimately, when you're employed without skin in the game in the business, you're paid a market rate salary for the work you're doing. But owning a business, you have to accept the risk and the return associated with the business. Think of a tradie, maybe a plumber. The best they could possibly earn at the top of a market rate salary is probably 150 grand at best. I know a business, and that business is earning 500,000 a year after tax, having paid the tradie 150 grand to run the business on an employed basis. So you can see there's an opportunity to build wealth. That business has invested in real estate as a result of those earnings. And not everyone is cut out for taking skin in the game because, you have different objectives along the way. So you need to test yourself as a business owner to make sure that that's what you really want to do. Are you prepared to take that risk with a view to driving that return over time? So if you're a business owner or if you're looking to get into business and you want to test that you've got these 5 key attributes, write them down on a page, put down your rating out of 10 as to how good you are at each of the attributes and why you think you're that way. So in other words, resilient, I'm a 9 out of 10 because I do this, this and this. I'm not a 10 because of X. Right? And then identify 3 people in your circle that you would trust that they would give you full and frank advice on whether you've got the attributes. And that information should be perfect for you to figure out if you need to change things up or if you've got what it takes to make it happen in business. I hope this video has helped you decide whether business is right for you. And remember, it's not a set and forget. You might be in business right now, and this business might have really questioned at their heart about whether you've got what it takes to be a successful business owner. Or you're sitting there thinking, I'm in an employed role. Do I get into business? I've always wanted to. I've got an aspiration to be in business. Well, check to see whether you got the 5 key attributes because they'll set you up for success and make sure that you have a good experience in business.